Good. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this free webinar organized by FinClub in collaboration with Mr. Vikash Lalsing. So it's a great pleasure to have you again for another webinar, which we hope will be insightful to each and every one of you. Um, the main topic of discussion today is more about data protection. As you know, the security of data has been challenged by the incorporation of new services in the digital world. So data protection has become essential to continue operation in the new financial environment, especially due to the advance of financial technology, which is FinTech. We've heard over the past years a lot of scams, a lot of frauds, a lot of data and identity thefts happening online. So we believe that at FinClub, we have to build a certain trust and comfort for our customers that their data is secure with us and it's well protected and not shared with third parties as well. So this is the main objective of this webinar, is to give you that assurance, that trust in our products and services. And with the participation of Vikash, who is among us today, we hope that we will be able to succeed in our objective and eventually give you more tips and tricks on how to protect your data online, whether it's with FinClub and social media and across different websites. So let's join me in welcoming Vikash Lalsing. So Vikash is with us. I'd like to thank you again, Vikash, for accepting our invitation to participate in this webinar. It's a real pleasure on behalf of the whole FinClub team. So I'll ask you, maybe Vikash, for those who don't know you, to give a brief introduction about yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Riken. Thank you for inviting me, for having me for this session. It's a pleasure to join you for this web series. So for those who don't know me, I'm Vikash Lalsing. I'm from Accentrix Consulting. So where we specialize in information security and data protection. So I have with me about, little bit about more than 20 years experience in IT service delivery, governance, risk, and compliance for global organizations. And I've been actively working in implementing information security and data protection for organizations based in Mauritius and Europe. So I've been quite involved into implementing GDPR back in the early days when it was rolled out by the European Union. So yeah, so my experience comes from mainly InfoSec and data protection.
Sorry, sorry for this. The inconveniences of live. My mic was actually off. So again, Vikash, I was saying, we speak a lot of data privacy today in the business environment. Could you give us just an overview of what privacy is, what data privacy is, and why is it so important?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. So yeah. So when we talk about privacy, we need to understand that there's a difference between data privacy, data protection, and data security. But to answer your question, so privacy is a fundamental human right. So it is the right that each individual have to decide what data or what information they want to make public or not. So when we talk about fundamental human right, we're talking about the rights that has been declared under United Nations Human Rights Article 12, for instance, under the EU Charter for Fundamental Rights Article 7, the European Convention for Human Rights, for instance. I mean, all these define the fundamental human rights. So when we talk about privacy, first and above all, we talk about this fundamental human right of individual to safeguard their personal data and to decide what to make public or not. So extrapolating from that, I mean, from the right of privacy, then we have what we call data privacy, which is basically implementing data. Implementing privacy in terms of data that organization handle. On someone, and then there's a data protection, which is the overlying. But yeah, so this is what I wanted to clarify, because sometimes there's a confusion about data privacy and data protection and privacy itself. But privacy is actually comes from human rights.
Okay, and so I understand that data privacy and data security are two different topics, right?
Yes, correct.
So what would be an example of data security?
So let me explain in terms of so we talk about privacy, and then we talk about data protection, and under data protection, so we talk about data privacy and data security. So let's say in the digital world, you have your personal data uh, about yourself, so your name, your address, your phone number, and bank details. So all these are your personal data, right? So this is data that you would typically want to keep secure. You would want to keep confidential, and data protection is about protecting this personal data. So uh, let's say if we look at data protection from a legal perspective, so it is about protecting all the personal data that can identify you as an individual. Now, when we look at underlying what's under data protection, so we have data privacy, which is basically implementing the legal requirements to protect the data. Such requirements are defined, let's say, under data protection regulations, like DPA, like GDPR. An example of implementing data privacy would be implementing internal procedures to abide to data subject rights, for instance, or even having privacy policies. So that would be implementation of data privacy. When we talk about data security, so this is mostly the part which relates to information security. So information security is the layer that protects all data, irrespective whether it's personal data or not. And when we talk about data security itself, it is the controls, so the measures that we put in place to protect personal data. So what is important to understand is that you cannot achieve data protection and data privacy unless you put data security. So for example, at an office where you're treating a lot of personal data, if you have access control implemented, so this is an information security control, it's a data security control. You're protecting uh, external people to gain access to your office to contain personal data, providing permission to individuals based on their role to understand what access, what files they have, what data they are allowed to have visibility on. That's an example of data security as well. So logical access control, physical access control, encryption, for instance, these are data security. So yeah, that's the key difference that we need to understand when it comes to data privacy and data security.
Yeah, thank you. One thing that comes to my mind is that we hear with the radio, the likes of the MBA continuously doing advertisement to kind of educate and create awareness around not sharing password, PIN numbers for ATM cards over the internet, and not to share with any third parties. Uh, would that fall into data protection for the end user, for customers? And what are the different risks that entails with data? What are the threats that people, that customers can be subjected to online?
Yeah. So basically, the main threats that people can have is, data breach, of course, so personal data being breached and getting into the hands of individuals that are not supposed to have access to this data. So this is one of the main concerns when it comes to individuals. As I said, privacy, the right to privacy, is the right to decide what information we want to make public or not. So if there's a data breach and confidential information about an individual goes into the public domain, so that affects your personal right to privacy, right? So that's the first thing. So we need to be aware of this. Secondly, so there's multiple forms of data breach, and when we talk about let's say external factors that can be good, like intruders gaining access to confidential data for monetary gains. So the let's say the next threat to an individual is the risk of losing money. So like risk of someone gaining access to their account and transferring funds out of the account. There's the risk that someone lure them into uh, scams or into paying for service which is a fake service, for instance, or investing into a fake product. And one thing that we need to bear in mind that there's this, I mean, aspect as well, and then there's also the threat when it comes to phishing. So, for example, an attacker could attack a phishing, could make a phishing attack on an individual and obtain their credentials and use that credentials for illegal activities. So it's not just about protecting your privacy or protecting your financials, but also protecting others. Because if you lose access to your accounts, to your let's say social media or online accounts, and someone use these accounts for illegal activities, then the individual who ultimately own the account will be held accountable. So we need to bear in mind these threats.
Okay, okay. So, see, I think FinClub at the start we've developed a very comprehensive data privacy and protection policy, whereby we've included different aspects of the regulatory expectations. So we kind of also develop a digital identity, which we have named FinID. This allows us to kind of keep keep not secret but keep keep it very confidential, the names of our customers. Uh, as you know, we are a peer-to-peer lending platform. We connect two different parties. On one hand, you have the borrowers, and on the other hand, you have lenders. So it is mandatory that we keep private information, private data, very confidential, and we have developed FinID. So, what is FinID? It is a digital identity, a unique identification number that is allocated to each of our customers. This mitigates any risk of conflict interest, of confidential or private data being shared uh, outside of the platform. So I think this is a bit in line with what you just said. It is important that data is not shared to people with ill intentions, with fraudulent intentions. So my next question to you would be about data protection and privacy, and who, whether it is regulated in Mauritius, and who is the regulator.
Yeah. So before going to that, I would like to add something to what you said. So anonymizing personal data is a very good approach when it comes to providing online services like you do. So for instance, like you mentioned, having a digital ID, it helps anonymize the individual and not disclose their identity unless it's for valid reasons. So just to add on to what you said, what we often use is to disclose data on a need-to-know basis, so on a requirement for someone to know the data. So if there's a business need, then you disclose the personal data to the person. If there's no business need, you can anonymize the data and disclose only what's required. So I think that's a very good approach from what you said. Now coming back to in terms of regulation. So in Mauritius, so we have the Data Protection Office that regulates the Data Protection Act, which is the law that protects personal information. And this is led by the Data Protection Commissioner, who ensures that personal data of individuals are protected by organizations mostly. So an organization can be a controller processor, and also what the DPO can do, they can sanction organizations who do not abide to the requirements of the law. So from our interaction with the market here and with the DPO, we know that regulations are being strengthened. So they are being strengthened into making sure that organizations protect personal data adequately and prevent disclosure of personal data, and make sure that the rights of individuals are being protected. So ultimately, in Mauritius, it's the DPO who has the authority to manage and enforce the data protection.
Okay, okay. And what would be the best practices that the business has to adopt in terms of data? I mean, let's say I take myself for an example. Let's say I'm a customer of different banks, different institutions, organizations. Uh, what are the policies in place? Let's say at least or the regulations. Uh, a lot of people don't know about their data rights, if I can call that this way. Data rights about my data, which is stored with different organizations. What are my rights as a customer?
So yeah, so basically under the Data Protection Act, so as a customer, so not just as for a bank, for instance, you could be a customer of a shop, of any retail shop for that matter. So you have certain rights because these, let's say, these organizations, they collect your personal data, your name, your surname, your address, your contact details, and when it's bank, they have potentially your salary information, they have your bank account information, right? So as an individual, any individual that is in Mauritius, if we are looking at the Data Protection Act of Mauritius, so I have the right to be informed. For instance, let's say I fill in an online form that requests me my personal data, and it requests me my name and my email address. So the organization or that is collecting this data needs to inform me for what purpose they are collecting this information. Is it for I don't know, for serving me as a client to offer me a service? Is it to allow me to trade? Is it allow me to invest? And so you need to provide this information. So this is the right of to be informed. There's when we use the right of information, I mean the right to be informed. There's also the scope. So, for instance, let's say I'm registering for a newsletter. Someone asks me my name and my email address, and then they ask me for my phone number or my residential address. So that's a bit. I mean, that's more than what's required for the business needs. So we need to be careful as an individual whether whenever we are providing our personal information, whether it is for what purposes it is used and why we're being asked that much information. If it's too much information that is being asked for the service that is being offered, then we might think whether we want to give that information away. There's also the right for access. So once you provided your information, your personal data, to an organization, you can request to have access to a copy of all information they have on you, and they need to provide it to you within reasonable time. There's a right to rectify. So, for instance, you provided your information to a bank, and then you change your address. So you have the right to request a change. You have the right to object in terms of them processing the data. You have the right to restrict processing as well. So, for instance, let's say I registered for a service with a bank, and then they tell me that they want to use my data for marketing purposes. So I can object or restrict that processing as well. And of course, there's the right to be forgotten, which is basically uh, delete all personal data on oneself. So anyone, any individual can exercise these rights, and organizations need to abide to it at the moment they have. I mean, it is justified. So let's say I can give an example. Let's say I go to my bank. I'm still uh, getting services from the bank, but I also need to delete my personal data. I exercise the right to be forgotten. Obviously, if I do that, they would not be able to have me as a customer, right? So this is why we say that there needs to be a valid justification when we apply our rights as well, and there may be situations where organizations cannot fulfill our rights because they have other legal obligations to abide to.
Yeah, but we spoke about data protection, data regulations, the regulator, about the data rights of individuals. What if there's any violation in terms of data protection or privacy? Uh, is, is there a kind of channel where people can report these to the regulator?
Yeah. So typically, how it works is that all organizations that collect personal data need to have a privacy policy advertised on their website or otherwise. So typically, it's on their website. So you have a privacy policy, and the privacy policy need to have a contact detail of the person within the organization that you can contact in case of a complaint. So first level of complaint, if ideally, is you complain within the organization if you feel that your personal, the right of individuals or your privacy rights are not being respected. But otherwise, everyone is free as well to contact the data protection office and to report any misuse or any issues they have with an organization not uh, abiding to the data protection right and not respecting the individual right. So there is uh, this route as well, which is open to everyone. And normally, the DPO, the Data Protection Office, will investigate any request, and if genuine, then there's further investigation.
Sorry, I was on mute again. We have one question which is in line with what you just explained. One user is asking, how is the privacy policy enforced and monitored? I believe I can answer from FinClub, but we would like to hear from you first as an expert. Based on your experience with different organizations, how are these privacy policies enforced and monitored across different institutions?
So internally, once an organization has a privacy policy and has privacy of individuals at heart, let's say, so they need to have a framework internally. So ideally, they would have a DPO, data protection officer, that would manage and enforce it at organization level. And then they could also use the help of external auditors that will validate to what extent they're complying with their privacy policy and the general data protection regulations or the Data Protection Act on which as well. So there's two levels. There's internal uh, management of it and enforcement for the DPO and the internal structure, and there's external validation as well.
Yeah, and just to mention, on behalf of FinClub, we have, like Vikash said, a comprehensive data protection and privacy policy, which is indeed available through our website in the footer. So users can go there and read about it. It's quite elaborate. And to answer the question, so we have indeed internal audits which are conducted not only by auditors which are appointed by FinClub, but also from the regulator. So FinClub is regulated by the FSC. We have a peer-to-peer license which we obtained. Actually, we were the first to obtain in 2021. So the regulator recurrently do some audits in terms of our systems to ensure that we are compliant with the regulations. So yeah, beside auditors, we also recurrently conduct testing uh, based on dummy data which we have at our end to ensure that there are no breaches, that there are no hackers lurking around. We also make sure that our staff are recurrently trained on different what I say, different regulations and rules that are established by the regulator to ensure that staff does not open harmful links through emails that are shared by external parties. So these are the different strategies that we adopt at FinClub to ensure that data is protected and kept confidential. We also have NDAs that are signed by the employees to ensure that confidential and private data are not shared outside of the company. So these are the different, let's say, risk mitigation strategies that we adopt. And like you rightly mentioned, different organizations based on their business needs have different approaches. So yeah, so that would be to answer the question in a, of our user. My next question to you would be about the different identity thefts that we hear mainly in banks, but also in other financial institutions. What would be your advice to those people who have allowed themselves to be scammed online uh, by sharing either password to the bank accounts, internet banking accounts, or have shared their credit cards online? What would be the tips and tricks that you can share with them to reduce reoccurrences?
Yeah. So yeah, before answering on this one, I'd like to mention just one thing: is that from our experience on the ground and through, working with local organizations and global organizations, there are three main, let's say, threats or incident types of incidents that we're seeing that are quite recurrent. So we have one which is compromised credentials, whereby so like email accounts are being compromised because the credentials, the username and password have gone into the hands of external people or attackers. There's what we call online scams, as you mentioned. So there's a lot of online scams that are happening these days, and as you rightly mentioned as well, identity theft. So I'd like to first explain a little bit how these occur, so that people understand that what are the risks. Because sometimes I hear people saying that, you know what, this would not happen to me because for so and so reasons, but they don't realize when it happened, because sometimes you might uh, have a compromised credential and you do not uh, realize it. So one example is that when we talk about compromised credentials, it typically takes about 207 days for someone to realize that their credentials have been compromised. So when we talk about business email compromise, for instance. So why is this so? Because someone may have access to your email account, so they might have your username and password, and they would not change it, or they would not as in change your password or prevent you from accessing your account. So what they would do, they would just log into your account, monitor your emails, and then see the patterns and see how you behave, what kind of emails you send, what kind of payments you do. So what they would do is do an observation activity, which might take days, might take weeks, and then they would replicate an email that you would typically send to someone you know and extort money from that person. So this is one of the risks. So when you say, okay, my email is compromised, I would know about it. No, not necessarily. You might not know about it until 207 days later. So that's the average time it takes for someone to detect a compromised credential. And it takes approximately 70 days to remediate such an incident and then to recover it. So we need to be aware of this. Attackers don't just gain access to your email and then remove your access. No, they just continuously monitor, see the pattern, and then when they launch an attack, you wouldn't even know. They might uh, send an email to someone you know in your inbox and asking them for payment. They might issue an invoice and then like the invoice that you issue and then put a different account number. So these kind of things. So we need to make sure that when to prevent this, we enable what we call two-factor authentication on our emails. But that again is that as well is not very safe. We had situations, we had incidents that we've been managing for our clients whereby uh, someone so an email account was compromised, right? And there's two-factor authentication enabled. That is, a code is sent to the mobile of the person to enable them to log on. What happened? The attacker called the person, the user, and say, "I am from X company. We are doing a test verifying your account." And what the attacker was doing was actually entering the email and password on the other end of the line. And then the attacker told them, "You will receive a authentication code on your mobile shortly. If you can send it to me, I will confirm your identity," which obviously the user did. And that's how the attacker gained access to the user's email. And the user didn't realize even, but it happened. The user thought that was a normal process for a security checkup. So even though you have 2FA, two-factor authentication, it might not be that secure. You need to be careful about that. Secondly is to change your online passwords regularly. So we recommend every 90 days or as soon as, every 90 days you change your password, or every 30 days, depending on how secure you want your account to be. And you need to be careful not to fall into phishing traps. So recognize phishing emails when you see them. So this is one thing. So that's when it comes to compromised credentials. So phishing is not just about recognizing them, but it is an evolving attack. So you need to continue to learn and to stay up to date with the way attackers operate. Secondly, as you mentioned, online scams. So we see a lot of people falling for scams. If you have a social media account, you would see online posts where people are giving away loans. They're giving free loans. They are giving air tickets, free cars, fast food meals, and etc. So these are scams, obviously. So the attackers, what they do is they try to spot the weakest people online. So people who would fall for these scams and who would fall for free giveaways on social media. And once they are able to identify these people, let's say someone posts something on social media, they're giving away a free mobile phone, for instance, and they see that, I don't know, 1,000 people have commented on this post. So this means that these people are vulnerable because they did not detect that this was a scam. And if these people are so much vulnerable, their password might be quite easy to guess then. So what they would do, they would target these people and then try to guess their password through some online tools. And often what happens, out of 1,000, maybe 5-10%, the attackers will be able to get their password and then get into their social media accounts and use that for illegal activities or illegal purposes. So we need to be careful about online scams. So it's not just a matter of falling for the trap, but what happens if you fall for the trap? What are the risks? You might say, "I don't have a lot of information to hide," but we need to be careful about what is personal information and what is professional information that you're giving away online, but also in terms of not just the harm that can be done to you, because you might not have much to lose. Let's say if someone gain access to your social media account, but they might cause harm to other people around you, whether it's people in your immediate circle or not. So you need to be very careful about this. So the scammers, they always try to identify the most vulnerable people who are likely to fall for scams, and then try to extort money or try to use their accounts for illegal activities. And you might have genuine competitions online. So one way is you might have official pages of organizations that are online, and often you would see the blue tick just beside these organizations' name. So these official pages, yes, probably they might have run some kind of competition or the other, but just be careful that not everything you see online is really free. And an interesting thing that you mentioned is identity theft. So what happens is that I often say people who got scammed and they don't realize they've been scammed. Why? Because simply there's so much information on them that people are using their personal information to create a false social media account or trying to impersonate them. So identity theft is quite common nowadays, mainly because we provide so much information on ourselves online that people can aggregate this information and create a false identity, or they can even have access to our account and use our identity to gain access to other information. So yeah, we need to be very careful. And one thing which I often tend to say is that, for instance, how many of us use our birth date or vehicle plate number as ATM pin code or banking pin code, for instance? So a lot of us do that without realizing. We think that, okay, the first four digit of my birth date would be my pin code or would be my ATM pin code. And if someone is an attacker is observing you and is or steal your identity or get more information on you, they can potentially cause quite a lot of harm because all these information are accessible online. So we need to be very mindful of that. And one more thing I wanted to add on this is that in Mauritius now we have the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Act 2022, which basically sanctions any individual who performs a criminal act using cyber tools or using technology. I won't give you too much details in this session regarding the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Act, but what you need to understand, if someone steals your identity and commits a crime, and ultimately you cannot prove that your identity was stolen and it is related to you, as an individual, you're liable to between 1 to 2 million rupees fine and 10 to 20 years prison under the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Act. So it's not just about what you have to lose, what is the impact on you, but what is the impact if someone use your identity for criminal purposes and then you get uh, criminal proceedings on you because it's your it's your identity. So people need to be aware of that and they need to make sure that they don't fall for these kind of traps.
Yeah, thank you for this elaborated insight. Uh, you spoke about credentials, online credentials, and there's one thing that I would like to put emphasis on. We understand the risk we recent episodes of online scams in Mauritius, and I think like what we actually did is that when a customer is doing his registration, so what we use is his email and mobile number to identify that person, send him an OTP to ensure that uh, the correct mobile and email address are being provided. Actually, we go a step further. Our system does not allow the same email address or mobile number to be used for another registration, whether it be for a loan or a lender. So just to say that as a precautionary measure, uh, today, if I, Riken Dukaram, is registered with FinClub, either as a borrower or lender, and I've used my email address and my mobile number, so no one will be able to use the same credentials to create another account. Uh, that's one practice that has proved to be working. Uh, for instance, we've had in the past one borrower whose loans were not approved. So they came back and tried to create another account using the same email and mobile number. And eventually the system did not allow them to proceed. So that's one way that we were able to test our system and make sure that, yeah, indeed, we are mitigating risk of identity theft. Because, say, identity cards can easily be stolen. Other information, be by family members, sons. We've seen sons, brothers, family members of elderly people trying to hack their accounts and finances. So this is one practice that we believe is working, and we would recommend that other organizations do the same. And then second thing, you spoke about scams online. I can tell you that when we launched FinClub at the start, everyone believed that it was actually a scam. So everything that is online today offering money, I think both scams like people offering loans online on social media, etc., is heavily impacting on fintechs because people have already had a bad taste in the mouth when it comes to these scams, and there's a lack of trust in fintechs as well, and this this kind of it's not discouraging, but it makes our attempt to promote new fintech and innovative services uh, more hard. And as an expert, maybe you could give us a few tips on how to identify secured platforms online from fake ones and fraudulent ones. Do you have any tips, recommendation? What are the things to look when browsing the internet or seeking online financial services?
Yeah. So I think first of all, as I said, you need to make sure. So when you're browsing online, you need to make sure that you're looking at official pages. So official pages of organizations. So if you look at uh, like Facebook and Instagram. So as I said, you would have blue tick beside the name of the page. If you look at LinkedIn, LinkedIn is more let's say stringent. So for someone to have a company account on LinkedIn, you need to use a corporate email and not like a normal free email that you have. So one is to be able to recognize the pages. So uh, don't respond to individuals or dodgy pages that try to lure people into uh, providing services, loans, and investment advisory and investment services, for instance. So that's one. Secondly, is to confirm the information. So, for instance, if you see a company offering a service online, you you do some research on the company. You would obviously fall into an office with a phone number. You would see what is the name of the company. You can go onto the registrar of company's website, which is available freely. You can search the company name. You can know whether it's a genuine company or not, because you might have a page XYZ, you search it, they have a website, they have seemingly an office, but when you search XYZ on the register of companies, it does not exist, right? So that would be something to bear in mind. So you need to make sure that the company, you do some due diligence on the company, some research, and not trust blindly. That's one, and make sure that, as you said, FinClub, you have licenses under the FSC. So the FSC advertises freely all licensees on their website. So if you go on the FSC Financial Services Commission website, you would see the actual names of the companies that are licensed under FSC and which type of license they have. So whether they are authorized to do the activities they're claiming to do. You would see their business address and their contact details as well. So I would say that these are the two main things: is to do some quick research on the company, understand whether it's genuine or not. Once you get the information, you verify it across companies, registrar companies and the FSC. So for financial services, this is the best way you can protect yourself as an individual.
Sorry, again, my mic was on mute. Yeah, just an out of the box question. Now you're speaking. I've always wondered what is the difference between ethical hacking and actual hacking that people are subject to.
I mean, ethical hacking, or normally what we call the white hat hackers. So basically, they identify vulnerabilities within systems and then report it to the organization. So white hat hackers can uh, normally they work alongside the companies. So they work alongside a company, and then try to identify loopholes and then report it to the company. And sometimes you might have freelancers or independent white hat hackers, so what you call ethical hackers, and they would just do, I mean, for research purpose, they would try to find vulnerabilities and then report it to the organizations. So that's the main difference compared to uh, the normal hackers. Normal hackers, they would find a vulnerability, hack into the system, gain access, and then they would exploit it for their personal gain.
Okay. And maybe my last question to you before answering two questions from the audience would be, um, as a leader, teacher, and a consultant in data protection, you've had the chance to have a look at our platform, finclub.mu. Or what are your general observations?
Yeah. So I think FinClub, your platform is very secure. So one thing I always say is that whenever you have implemented data privacy and data protection within the organization, to advertise it and make sure that everyone knows about it and knows that you value the privacy and the personal data. So FinClub, I think you do that really well. So you, as you said, you have the digital identity, which anonymizes personal data. You advertise your privacy policy. You say you do have on your website information such as what is the terms of use of your website, so how it's being used, what data is being collected, and why it is being collected. So I think that that's really important for organizations to realize that whenever you collect data, you need to have an adequate privacy policy, not just a privacy policy that you copy paste across from somewhere else, and that you collect data only for what is authorized and for the under the legal obligation and for business use, and don't collect more data than what's required. I think from if we look at what FinClub is doing, so you're doing I think a really great job when it comes to that, and advertising and enforcing that you have uh, personal data at the heart of your services of your offering is quite good. So yeah, I think from my perspective, to be honest, because I already saw on the platform as well, so I would say it inspires trust to deal with organization.
Yeah, thank you, Vikash. I see we have a few questions in the audience. Uh, One question that I think you have answered part of it. So we have Bhavna asking. Her question is as follows: as a consumer in today's data-driven world, how do I protect myself against scams? I think you answered part of the question, but do you have anything to add
Yeah.
on this?
Yeah, so as I said earlier on, so to make sure you identify what are scams, right? So no one would offer you things freely on the internet, right? So you need to raising awareness, or I mean, being aware yourself. So training yourself to recognize this scam would be the first thing. One more thing I would suggest is to share as little information, personal information as possible online. So we need to know the difference between professional and personal data. So professional data, that would be useful in general for people to know you as a professional, but personal data, you need to share as little as possible. And if you're a regular user of social media, I would say, so make sure that you probably change your password regularly. You have 2FA, two-factor authentication, and multiple means of authentication in place. So one thing, why I'm saying this is because sometimes you might be subject to a scam and you know about it, right? And you action on it immediately. Sometimes you might not have noticed that you were part of a scam, and the attackers gain access to your accounts. In which case, if you regularly update your accounts, and you update and you make sure that your passwords are changed, then you would reduce the risk. Uh, so yeah, I would think, yeah, basically making sure that you recognize them, and do not share your credentials as well. Sometimes between colleagues, between close friends and families, we might share credentials. So you need to avoid that because you don't know how the person is using it, the credentials, or how the person is storing the credential, whether they're storing it in a secured way or not.
Yeah, I think one other tip would be also I see a lot of people using shared networks, shared Wi-Fi in public places. You see in buses, people are logging into their mobile banking apps, which can easily be tapped by people standing in the bus or someone overlooking your shoulder. So I think this is one practice what that people need to understand that they should stop using public Wi-Fi to log into their bank, whether it's internet banking or mobile banking applications. And I think they should be aware. What we try to educate our customers is to be careful about unsolicited emails with links to external sites. So to be careful on the security of the website as well. One thing that we promote is looking at the HTTPS link. If the S is missing, so be careful. So we try to educate our customers too. So let's see if we have any more question. I see Miss Noyan asking one question. It's how does the company notify users in case of data breach or unauthorized access to their information? So I don't know. I'll try to answer on behalf of FinTech first. We're actually working on a similar process to report data breaches. Fortunately, so far, after 1.5 year in operation, we don't have any such cases, but we have a process in place, which is first, we will alert the authorities concerned if our system is breached, is hacked. So we have to alert the data protection office, as you mentioned, through the right channels, but also then inform the customers about the eventual hacking breach that has occurred and what is the impact on his financial position with us. So based on that, then eventually we will take the necessary reactions to remediate to the situation. Uh, but as I mentioned, we're also implementing a data breach response plan to ensure that we can respond quickly and effectively to a breach. Uh, as you mentioned, so we are also abiding by the Data Protection Act and ensure that all necessary protections are in place to ensure data are encrypted. So I don't know if you have anything to add on this. Uh,
I think it's good that you have all the process in place. So just to recap a little bit on generally what happens is that in case of a suspected data breach, because sometimes there might be an incident where you think data has been breached, but you need to investigate further to understand it. So first thing is the first course of action that we recommend, that I would recommend, is that prevent further damage, so prevent the data from propagating, I mean the breach from propagating. So that would be the first thing. And then determine what data for which individual, for how many individuals have been breached. So that would be the first step, so the investigation step. And then eventually notify the users if there's a data breach. So uh, there are some cases where I've worked previously where, for instance, the data breach was just the email address or the person name that went out, and sometimes it's only the person name, the name, surname, and if the person already has an online account and is already on let's say on the public domain, so there's not much impact. You would eventually notify the person, but there's not much impact to the privacy because there's no further disclosure of data. And then, of course, in Mauritius, you are obliged under the Data Protection Act to report any kind of data breach, irrespective of the severity, to the Data Protection Commissioner and to the Data Protection Office. But yes, I mean that's a good process that you have internally.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any other questions from the audience, but I have one question, which I've always been thinking. We speak a lot of big data, data mining. We live, as Bhavna mentioned, in a data-driven world today. We see the likes of Facebook, Google, LinkedIn using our personal data and behavior online to sell to us ads, products, services. So, do you think way forward we could personally, as an individual, use our data to make money out of it? See, what I mean is that these institutions, these big organizations, corporates are using data which are available to them free and making business and billions of money out of it. But what about the consumer? What about his rights to earn, let's say, a revenue out of it? You think this will be regulated way forward?
I'm not too sure about this. I mean, let's look at it why they use personal data. So, as you mentioned, they use personal data to have targeted sales, right? So, targeted adverts or targeted posts. So, the data that they use I mean, the personal data is mostly for this. So, they aggregate the online behavior of an individual based on the interaction on social media, on messaging platforms, on communication platforms. They aggregate all this data, they profile the individuals, and then they sell ads. So they show them relevant ads, and when the user click on those ads, then it generates revenues for these online platforms. So this is how they make money basically. So they sell ads, and then when there's a click, they get more money than what they would typically get just selling the ads. So in terms of personally monetizing, I mean, as an individual, I don't see this coming, but I see it more as in laws being more stringent nowadays. So we've seen Europe, the GDPR, European GDPR regulations, the online privacy regulations that are now applicable, and there's the communication regulations that are coming in as well in Europe. So I would see it as being more stringent. So rather than we choosing, I mean, as individuals, we choose how to monetize the data. It would be the other way around, is to prevent monetization of your data without consent. But for an individual to gain, I don't really see the business case how it might happen. Maybe there might be other business models that might come eventually, but at this moment in time, I would see more a limited use of personal data as the laws become more stringent and restricting uh, data being used rather than the other way around. So just a quick note on this, for instance, if you are a business and you're using online advertising, nowadays you cannot do targeted advertising in Europe. So previously you could target people with this or that criteria and say, okay, I want only these people to see my adverts because they are likely to be my consumers. So you can still do that in other jurisdictions, but in Europe, you're not allowed to do this. So you cannot choose what advert, what product someone needs to see because that impacts their right, so their right to freedom actually. So yeah, so this is what we're saying, that the global trend.
Thank you, Vikash. I think we don't have any questions from the audience. I think you've answered all my questions that I've had. I'd like just to remind people in attendance that FinClub is a digital platform, peer-to-peer lending platform, which is regulated and licensed by the Financial Services Commission of Mauritius. What we do, in short, is that we connect borrowers, credit-worthy borrowers, which are assessed by our team here, and then connected with registered lenders who finance and eventually will fund their loans. And everything is online, everything is digital. So we provide convenience, simple UI that allows people to apply for a loan anywhere, anytime. So from the comfort of their homes, and we provide investors with an alternative investment option where they can enjoy greater returns compared to traditional investment instruments. So all you have to do is go on finclub.mu and check out our products and services. So on that note, Vikash, I would like to thank you on behalf of the whole team. We greatly appreciate your availability today, and thank you again for accepting our invitation. And hopefully, we hope to have you among us for another session soon. Thank you, Vikash.
Thank you very much for having me on this
And
session.
thank you, everyone. Wishing you a great evening, and see you next time. Thank you.